Welcome to Hack Your API First. In this module, we're going to start really messing around with those APIs. We're going to manipulate them. We're going to tamper with parameters, and we're going to get this app to do things that it was never intended to do. So this is where it starts to get really interesting. And I want to start out by talking about some of the assumptions we make around trust, which turn out to be very dangerous indeed. Let's take another typical smart, rich client app communicating over an API with a web server. In this case, I've chosen a Galaxy Tab Pro and an Apache web server. But once again, just like in the previous modules, the brand of client doesn't matter and the flavor of server doesn't matter either. It's the patterns that I'm most interested in getting across to you. So let's talk about these trust assumptions. So here's the first one. When we build an app and we push it out to a client, we expect that app to be trusted. That is, we expect it to run the way we designed it. We don't expect the app itself to be manipulated, and indeed it usually isn't, particularly when they're pushed out through stores like Apple's App Store or the Google Play Store. The integrity of the app is not what we're calling into question here, but we're trusting that it only runs the way we designed it to run. Next up, we trust the connection. Now we may implicitly and naively trust it, or we may do a good job of our transport layer protection, use HTTPS, and come to the reasonable conclusion that the integrity of the transport layer is good. And when it's done well, that's not a bad assumption to make. Now, of course, we also build the API sitting on the web server, and we usually work with the assumption that that API running on the server can trust the client. We assume that it's only going to be requested in the way we designed it with the parameters that the app can send to it. So really, we're making the assumption that we control this ecosystem: client, connection, server. So we're assuming that the app is always going to talk to the API in the way we designed it, and we're also assuming that the API is only going to respond to the app in the way we designed it. Now let's bring another variable into this picture. What happens when we sit the attacker here? So what happens when that attacker can control the way the device requests APIs and the way the APIs respond to the device? Now this is not compromising the connection. This is simply saying that before a request is sent from the device, what would happen if the attacker can manipulate it? And after that request is processed on the server and a response is sent back, what if the attacker can modify that response? That's what we're going to look at in this module, because it turns out that when we start making trust assumptions like what we see here, and then you put an attacker on the device, there are a number of different potential attack vectors available to someone with malicious intent. To properly set the scene for the things I'm going to demo across the remainder of this module, I'd like to go and talk briefly about untrusted data.